Hello, welcome to our channel. In this video, I'm going to explain why we need to change the inequality sign when we multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number. So for example, when you have studied inequalities, when you are trying to solve an inequality, if you have something like negative x less than 5, then you would want to isolate just x here. Then you'd want to have just x over here. So for that, you just multiply both sides by -1. Like that. At the same time, we learned that we need to change the sign. So this will become the opposite sign. So that will give us x greater than -5. So I'm going to explain why we really need to change the sign when we multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number. All right, first, let's look at an inequality with two real numbers. So this is true, -5 is less than 0, right? So what happens if we multiply both sides by a negative number and don't change the inequality sign? So if you multiply both sides by a negative number, we get -1 times this on this side, and on this side we get 0 times -1. So that will give us -1 times -5 is 5 less than 0. 0 times -1 is 0. But this is not true. 5 cannot be less than 0. So there is some error going on over here. So that is because you multiplied this inequality by -1 on both sides and didn't change the sign. If you had changed the sign to greater than 0, then that would be correct. 5 would be greater than 0. So instead, we need 5 greater than 0. So whenever we multiply by a negative number, we need to change the sign of inequality. The same thing applies with any real number instead of 5. So let's look at a number line. You have 0 here, and let x be some positive number. So we have x greater than 0, since x is some positive number. Then what about negative x? If you multiply this x by -1, make that negative x, that negative x on the number line will be somewhere over here on the other side. Then just by looking at the number line, we see that negative x is less than 0. So basically you made negative x by multiplying x by a negative number. So if you make x into negative x, then you need to flip the sign, so that greater than 0 becomes less than 0. Same idea if you have something like x greater than 5. So earlier we had 0. So let's try to see what happens when you have 5 over there. So again, we can look at it on a number line. So 0 is here, 5 is here, x is here. So x is some number greater than 5. Then if you multiply both of these, x and 5 by -1 on the number line, so this 5 becomes -5, which will be over here. And this x becomes -x, which will be over here. So there's a reflect about 0, about the origin. So from here, we see that -x is less than -5 because -x is to the left of -5. So anything to the left of -5 would be less than -5. So it looks like when we multiplied this x by -1, we have -x. When you multiply this 5 by -1, we have -5, but the sign switches. So here we have greater than, since x is to the right of 5. Here we have less than, because -x is to the left of -5. So this is the reason why we need to switch the sign whenever we multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number. Now one last thing, let's try to look at this using algebra instead of number line. So we have x greater than 5. We want to talk about negative x. So let's subtract x from both sides so that we have some expression or some inequality for negative x. Then this side becomes 0, x minus x is 0, greater than 5 minus x is 5 minus x. So we are subtracting x from both sides, so we don't have to change the sign. Now subtract 5 from both sides because we want to have negative x by itself. So on this side, you get negative 5 greater than negative x. Or in other words, this is negative x less than negative 5. So here we have x greater than 5, and it becomes negative x less than negative 5. So when we multiplied both sides by negative 1, making negative x and negative 5, the sign flipped from greater than to less than. Right? So this is the basic rule when we need to multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number. And the same thing applies when we divide also, divide both sides by negative number. Okay, so this is all I wanted to explain on this video. And thank you for watching. See you in the next video.